In 1965, my professor James Clayton at the University of Utah in history, he says, why don't you join us? We're having a seminar on Mormon stuff. And Leonard Arrington, who used to be our church historian, is organizing it. And it was like 6 weeks, guest speaker. Well, the last speaker was Earl Olson. He was at the time assistant church historian. Leonard Arrington was not yet our historian, church historian. And right at the end, he says, Earl, how about going down to the archives and maybe you could open the First Presidency's vaults and we could see some artifacts. He says, okay. So 13 of us went down, and I think most of them are dead. I was about the youngest guy in that session. And I didn't know the significance of it at the time, but he brought out some handwriting of Joseph Smith, some of his hair, and 3 seer stones that belonged to Joseph Smith. One of them was a little white stone, about like that, and it was shaped like a baby's foot. And for years I thought, what does that mean? Well, you know when you stamp a baby's foot on a blessing book or a baby book, it's kind of narrow at one end, and then as it gets up to the toes, it gets wider. And that's what it looked like. A white stone, small, about the size of a baby foot, and shaped like a baby's foot. And then there was another stone that looked like milk chocolate. It was the size of a softball, about like that. And it's like someone had molded dried mud in a ditch or nearly dried, and had put it together, and you could still see the finger marks to mold that stone that had become extremely hard. In fact, I tried to, test the end of one of the, and it was, I couldn't even break it. Not that I was trying, but it was just solid rock. And it had a handle on it so you could carry it. They'd molded the stone, and then they had a little cup-like saucer handle on it so you could carry the thing around. That was another seer stone of Joseph Smith. And then, of course, the third one was the one he used for the complete translation of the Book of Mormon, the one we have today. Very significant stone. Almost black with white streaks in it, about bigger than a chicken's egg, smaller than a turkey egg, about like that. He found it in a well in the Clark Chase's property, which is very close to the Smith family. And of course, being curious, I got right up to it, and I couldn't see a thing in it. But I didn't know how significant that was. I had just graduated from the University of Utah in history, and I'd seen all 3 stones, and come to find out that's almost unheard of. There's just no one. And so I thought, wow, because I didn't think that much of it at the time. I thought everybody got to see that. So when I did my book, Insider's View, I tried to get a picture of it. There are no pictures of that stone. Joseph Smith does not mention that he used that stone in the official history of the church. I suggested they may want to take a picture in case the stone disappeared. At least they'd have a picture. That argument went nowhere. But that stone helps you understand early Mormonism. And if you don't understand their mindset, you really don't understand early Mormonism. When I was institute director, I used to collect personages that Joseph Smith had seen, and a lot of things were seen in the Kirtland Temple. One day I asked Edgar Lyon, who was a Nauvoo historian for the church, institute teacher for many years, how did they see so much stuff and we don't see it today? And he gave me an answer. I'm not sure it's correct, but it's funny. He says, well, if you fast for 2 days and then drink a lot of beer, You will see things. Like I say, it's funny, but I don't think it's correct. It might have contributed. But I had a list of like 47 personages that Joseph Smith had seen, and a good number of them at the Kirtland Temple. One day they're out working on the temple and standing by a grape fence, according to Zebedee Coltrane, 70 at the time. And he says, well, and Joseph says, there's Adam and Eve. Described her as having dark hair, black eyes. And I thought, why don't members today see stuff? And you hear various speculations. Well, this was the era of the Restoration, so they needed all of this stuff. Or we're not as righteous as they were. But I think it's different than that, and it goes back to the mindset of Joseph Smith and his family. You realize the first 50 to 70 converts of Mormonism were treasure hunters, or had the treasure hunting mindset. Polly and Orrin Porter Rockwell, the Newell Knight family, the Knight family, Joseph Knight Sr., Oliver Cowdery, Martin Harris, all of the Smiths, Josiah Stoll. And they all thought the way I'm going to tell you they thought back then in the church. I'm going to read you just a couple of statements here out of my book in chapter 6 on witnesses to the gold plates. Michael Quinn did a good thing when he wrote The Magic Worldview, because it convinced a lot of LDS people that the Smiths are up to here in magic. My book is a little more dangerous than that, because it crossed a second bridge showing how that magical worldview impacted on 2 or 3 foundations of the Mormon faith. And even though President Hinckley said it had nothing to do with it, he was wrong. It's what they used to call second sight. And the scriptural phrase for that is, our eyes were open, or the eyes of our understanding were open. In other words, the mind. They're seeing these people in their mind. And this is a real aha moment for me to realize that this is what they're doing. They're not seeing all these personages that I had listed as an institute director. If you read section 110, the Doctrine and Covenants, read verse 1. The eyes of our understanding were opened. Or section 76, where the Savior is seen. And it says that they saw Jesus by the eyes of our understanding. It's a mental thing. It's not physical. The word see is not what happened. They perceive. That's important. They perceive. They didn't see. They perceived. They saw it. They felt that he was there, or they felt that their imagination or their mind suggested this to them. Martin Harris used to see Christ on crossbeams and talking out of donkeys' mouths, the list is goes on. But this is what Joseph's mother, Josiah Stoll, hired Joseph to hunt for buried treasure, because Joseph could discern things invisible to the natural eye. That's second sight. Or Ezra Booth says, Joseph can see these beings, spiritual, secular, even when his eyes are shut. There it is again, you see. Or section 110, where Joseph and Oliver Cowdery are behind 3 curtains, 3 little pulpits, and the congregation is there. If you'd have pulled those curtains away, the audience would not have seen those personages. And who are the personages? Well, Jesus shows, Moses, Elijah, Elias. You see, all by the eyes of their understanding. So this is not quite as impressive as it sounds, and they saw a lot of stuff because Joseph had taught them. These New York Mormons, when they got to Ohio, taught them how to think this way. Joseph was the leader, as Brigham Young said. They would see things, well, getting ahead here a little bit. So this is what they're seeing. In fact, one person says, we saw convoy after convoy of angels in the Kirtland Temple, all by the eyes of our understanding. Again, that's the phrase, the scriptural phrase for second sight. Now, if the church really believed that Joseph Smith could see in his seer stone, they would be then willing to tell us not only the stuff that he saw about spiritual historical personages, but also the guardian spirits in the hills. But they do not, for a very good reason. And when Joseph got to Ohio, he understood this would not play well with those coming out of organized churches like Signe Rigdon, like Isaac Morley, like the Pratt brothers. So they didn't talk about it. But this is what's going on, and if they really believed, like I say, that he could see spiritual personages, and he's using the same stone to see the treasure guardians that he is to translate the Book of Mormon, to see these spiritual personages. They don't tell you that. It's the rest of the story. Well, when I learned this is kind of an aha moment. This helps me understand early Mormon history.